have a really good time today. I think you all know I'm Sharon Hodgson, the president. It is my joy and honor to visit with you this afternoon and bring our presidential fellows, some of them along, for our piece of your first year or two. Presidential fellows, let me give you 1 minute and then I will turn it over to our great colleagues that are here today. It is a one-year fellowship. It is in my office, and it must be a tenured faculty member. You spend 1 year with me. You do no teaching for that year. You return to your teaching, and you shadow. You take on projects of your own interest. You spend some time in the vice presidential areas, and sometimes you contribute a very specific special project depending on what's going on that particular year. We hope to help you with the insider's view. It's not really a we, they, because our question we have positive is what lies between teaching administration, the line of bridge, or fog. Could be a fog. But we want you to have that inside view. We want you to keep the voice of the faculty in case we get rusty and we forget. And we want to, in effect, soften the hierarchy, the administrative teaching hierarchy. So in random order, so over here on my far right, this is John Hageman in anthropology. Here we have Eric Hohenstein in geography and environmental studies, GNES, right? It's from GNES, but it's an alphabet. So Nancy Winkle is in mathematics, and Marcelo Steenberg is in computer science. And in order, I do not, in here we had you, and you.
I actually have a question for you guys. The special projects you do, is that something that you're assigned, or how did you find that? What are you doing?
I thought it would be cool for you guys to hear what we all did for our year. And
Yeah.
because it depends on the year, sort of what things are happening, like what's happening around. I was one of the first presidential fellows for the whole year. Lisa Davis was only there for 6 months, and then I came for the year. So there are ongoing things that are happening in the president's office that get handed down from fellow to fellow. And one of those is the development of university policy. So it used to be the policy was in a binder. So Lisa went through and sort of categorized them and figured out which ones were just catastrophes and which ones were outdated and which ones were whatever. One of the things that I worked on all year was getting the different administrative areas to actually, well, the president obviously helped make them pay attention, right? So to make it a priority to start thinking about updating policies. And a lot of it is more like on the workplace side than on the school side, like thinking about like risk analysis or just workplace safety, insurance stuff. So things that aren't stuff we would come across as faculty at all. So it was the beginnings of that policy group and thinking about how policy should be formed. But my project as a math professor, the thing that I got into doing was a study with institutional research in the provost's office and math development, where we were interested in understanding what our students were dealing with in terms of repeating math development courses and what the successes and failures in the math development courses told us about what our students were going to go through. Yes.
Just to add, my second meeting with the provost, the president encouraged me to meet with the vice president. So my second meeting with him, we were having a conversation, and he said, so what do you think about graduate education at Northeastern? And we talked for an hour. And at the time, Nancy was running the Gen Ed task force. So my comment almost leaving the room was, I think we should do a task force. And then I talked to the president about it, and I ended up being one of the co-chairs of the task force. Because it started, it ended up being in the end of the conversation, it became my project during the year, right? And then leave it over.
And I did Gen Ed as I was leaving the president's office. I went to a conference, a general AAC&U conference on all higher ed, and I was really interested in undergraduate education. I really wanted to understand how we as an institution address liberal education, especially in a time where, like, quote unquote, vocational training is taking over. So I started doing Gen Ed.
For me, I think it was the first couple weeks of my fellowship, they closed Foster Avenue because they were doing some work on Foster Avenue. Unexpected. No notice. They tore it up, and that was one of our two entrances. That's our main entrance, the campus. That was on the first week of class. because of so we had to get the word out to students of how to reroute and so on. So I made, since I'm a geographer and cartographer, I made some maps that showed phase 1, phase 2 will be the buses will go this way, you should enter this way. And those maps were put up all around the place. But then I started thinking, the GIS skills that I'm bringing to the table might be useful for other things on campus, like enrollment services, increasing enrollments, even understanding where our students are, because there was no map of student distribution. So I mapped all the students, and then Dr. Haas let me present my idea to the administrative team, and it was well received. So that's what I did with a lot of my time. I put together a GIS with students for like 5 or 7, maybe 5 years of students, 60,000 alumni, all the employees, bus routes, bike routes, Ls, all kinds of things, competing institutions, high schools. Did some analysis myself, but the main thing was to develop this GIS program to transfer over to institutional research, institutionalize it. So I was working with Blaise Massini in his area, and they took it on. And so now we're trying to have a life of its own, and I'm still working with them, but that's how I spend my life.
And a minor extra comment, the gift of thinking in a different way. I'm really good at reading words. I can draw boxes and think about stuff, but it is a science, it's true. It's a visual learning, and Eric was able to help that permeate to more of us, and we learned some ways to think.
Projects that I did. So I was the first one that got sent to Cornell. That's the Policy Institute. That was really cool, and I think Eric went too. I recommend it very highly. But policy is cool, especially since all these things that are living on binders on select administrators' desks aren't widely available. And I thought, gee, if we're talking about transparency on campus, wouldn't it be nice if all these things could be just on a website somewhere? So I picked up a lot of where Nancy left off and tried to advance policy. I also started at a time when we were soliciting bids, for lack of a better term, for the location of the new El Centro campus. And so I got to work with finance and administration in that area. When we vetted all 3 sites that came to us, we gnashed our teeth and wailed a lot about one of the sites we wanted to get, which they saw us as a cash cow essentially, and we had to walk away from that deal. And then with the site that we're at now, we were able to work out a deal to buy that land, but then we had to go through the hell of city zoning. We know the state rules and regs up and down because we're a state institution, but the city is a completely different beast. It's in Illinois, it's different. And the pecking order and who you talk to first before you actually propose something, we were completely clueless. So that was a great learning experience. Actually, all of the universities in the state were approached by the University Center of Lake County because their funding was in trouble. And they were looking for somebody to sort of take them over, in a sense, or to help bolster them financially. It was decided that it would be in our best long-term interest as an institution, since we are kind of landlocked in this tiny couple square blocks area here, if we could grab it, get it for ourselves. And so I did a lot of work on that project. We ultimately didn't get it because those wonderful folks at Northern instead were seen as a better option. We lost out, but it was really a cool thing to do. I mean, because one of the neat things about this job is that it gives you a perspective on potentially the future direction of the institution as a whole for the next 10, 15, 20 years. If you're even remotely interested in what that looks like, maybe only a little bit now, but as you go forward and become more invested in the institution, it may become more important to you. But that was one of the coolest things about being the presidential fellow. It was fun.
And I would comment that April's project this year, one is very nebulous, it's to help with the development of student housing. And, it's sort of secretive, it's not, it's public, and you're doing this, and now you're doing this other thing because it's the state and the city again. And so we are moving along, and her other one that she wanted to take on, because some of it's whether you wish to, and some of it's what's there now. And she wanted to help integrate professional development across the university. And so the Learn and Lead Symposium, if she were here, she'd be plugging it. that there are strands on teaching and research and service, and it's for all members of the university community, not uniquely faculty, not uniquely civil service staff, not uniquely this or that. And so she has worked with 5, 6, 7, 8 groups to put that one together.
And just a little addition, you all were part of the reason she did this, because she participated in that beginning summer orientation with us. And she was like, wow, we could do this for everybody, maybe call it a reorientation. So it really came out of the stuff that you all were doing when you first came on to Northeastern's campus.
Why did you decide to do this? I mean, it probably has to do something with your long-term goals.
No.
Okay, so. Okay, I know for you, Nancy, but I mean, like in general, like why?
The call came out right at the time I went for tenure, or right at the time I was going through the tenure process. I had been teaching and teaching and teaching and teaching, and I was tired. You know, when you get to tenure, you're tired. And I was like, I felt like I had been doing math, just math, straight math, nothing but math, all the time math. And I really wanted to learn about what was going on around me. It was really as simple as that. I wanted to understand more about how the place works. Yeah, I didn't have any ambition to go do something else. I saw it as a 1-year break from the faculty gig that I had taken, and a chance to see things differently. I mean, when you think about it, what we do as academics is PhD just teaches you how to learn hard stuff. And it teaches you not to be afraid of learning hard stuff and being outside of your intellectual comfort zone. So this, in a way, does that, but it's much more unpredictable.
In my case, was the opportunity to do something different. Kind of similar to what Nancy said, but I remember asking the president in terms of what things fellows would do, and in our conversation, I think you mentioned going to Springfield and meeting the legislators and seeing how all the external things that you never get around, and you only hear that 5 minutes bullet on her State of the Union or the university or things like that. I said, that's something interesting, and I don't see myself as a computer science professor, even as a chair, just going and talk to state legislators about something. Or I got a chance to go to Haku, so lobby day in DC. So we visited every single state rep in their offices with a delegation of colleges and universities from Illinois, Saudi colleges and universities from Illinois. So those are things that otherwise you don't get to do. So everything that Nancy said plus this extra to me was a huge incentive there. On top of being able to shadow a president for an entire year, which also you don't get to do all the time. And something I didn't know that was a big benefit is my fear at the beginning is what does it mean to shadow the president, and how much can you talk, how much can you do, where can I go, what's the day to day? And in that sense, it was a great experience.
It's really an extraordinary opportunity. I think it's really rare for this to happen when there's the president invites a faculty member in, and such a kind of a confidential level where you really can discuss things candidly, respectfully, but candidly, and even disagree. And it really was an extraordinary experience.
So
Plus, we got to go to. Why did I do it? I did it, well, I was, faculty member for 15 years and chair for 7 years, and so I kind of know those jobs, and that's all from the bottom up, but there's this whole other half of the university that I wanted to see. So I saw it from the top down, and so now I have kind of a sense of the whole. And it just was really interesting to me to see that and to kind of be faculty and yet work in the president's office. You came face to face with kind of like some issues that the topic of this talk, what is between faculty and president. Well, in that position, you really are both, and so you have to kind of really come to terms with a little bit of the tension and dynamics between the two, and to understand them better. I thought it was really fascinating.
As a faculty member, I'm sitting here watching, I hear things going on around campus. I'm like, why did they do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. I wanted to go in and get as broad an understanding as possible of how the university as a whole works. I mean, I had a pretty good sense of a lot of the academic side, because I'd been on FACAC, I'd been on the college level curricular committee, I'd been involved in university level service, but beyond the academic side, I knew nothing. And so when I went in and the President Huss said, what would you like to do? I'm like, I want to do it all. I want to do everything.
Yeah, you said that.
And yeah, and little did I know that there was a lot to do. There was so much to do. It was a ton. But I now know the names of the faces that I see regularly on campus that aren't colleagues in an academic department somewhere. I have an appreciation for a lot of the work that people do in areas that maybe seemingly tangentially affect what I do in the classroom, but are responsible for keeping the lights on, getting the bills paid, struggling with the state bureausaurus, trying to get us out there so people know who we are and will send their kids here or they'll come here themselves.
One of the fun assignments that has been a little more focused with each fellow is the briefing book. Briefing book, and so on, like I said, it was more down to this, and okay, I've prepared a notebook, because I'm kind of a notebook person, of all of the information about Northeastern that I would possibly want to know when I do my testimony before the appropriations committee.
Can I give a background real quick?
Sure.
Twice a year, every state university has to go in front of appropriations committees, both on the House side and the Senate side. This may involve a trip to Springfield. It may mean that the committee meets in Chicago, so we go downtown. And so a handful of us, President, Vice President of Finance Administration, the budget officer, and the fellow, go and we sit and watch people get grilled about what are you doing with the state's money, that kind of thing. And to prepare, the presidents are asked all manner of questions from, how much does it cost to water the lawn, to how many students did you graduate next year? And so this binder is like an 8-inch binder full of stuff that the fellows prepare for the president. I'm sorry, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I'm just trying to contextualize it. Putting this thing together is a big job, especially when they advance the date of your hearing by 5 weeks.
Some years are harder than others because our legislative group of representatives and senators is a 2-year cycle. And so once you've got the committees outlined and pictures of who they are so that you know that you can greet so-and-so by name if need be, and who the chair is, so when you sit down at the table and you're looking at this group, you feel okay about it. So that only has to happen every other year. So some folks get the worst of the 2 updates, and Eric got that as well. But it was one of those delightful things, and all I was going to do is kind of give that same background that you want to be ready, at least my standards for how I do this. And so every now and then, a minority senator might say, I'm sure you have no minority faculty, or I'm sure you have no minority students. I don't care which one it is. Actually, I know, and I can usually, I work on it. I know this stuff mostly right now anyway, because that is my job. But the week before, I literally turn every page, I refresh my memory. And so, and my VP, my old VP said, never take the notebook to the table, because my first year I wanted to bring my notebook in case I wanted to read something else. No, it's not the protocol. That's all right, I can leave it back there. So whatever it is, if they want to whine about something, I can answer that. The brag points are usually in my remarks. I prepare ahead of time anyway, but I have other brag points in case I get to do that, because you're not supposed to talk for too long. So the preparation for 5-10 minutes maybe, when you sit down, you get about 10 minutes to be the most effective, the most condensed, and make Northeastern look the best possible is this thing. And the fellows always help do that. So, and we've gotten better at it too, a little more organized about it.
So what do you foresee the big projects or the big challenges that we might face in next? I think this probably don't have a perfect answer right now, but just a vague
I'll
idea.
make something up. As we look to the future, Northeastern has to find a way to be fiscally independent of state appropriation. The challenge for all universities now is what, public ones in particular, what will we look like in the future? You're supposed to figure out the teaching part, how are students going to learn? I'm supposed to figure out the fiscal balance when every year there's less state appropriation and less interest in, less perception of value that those dollars, hard tax-paying dollars earned, should go to universities. So we have to find a new kind of fiscal security. Part of that is a joint effort. If you decide we're only going to do MOOCs, and that's how we learn, then I'm supposed to find the money for the MOOCs. None of that is what I believe, but I just, some of these are joint things and others are not. So issues around fiscal stability are going to be with us for the next several years. By the time you get there, we kind of level to a more peaceable place, and all of higher ed across the country might, but it is that. We are going to implement student housing. This will be new and different, and I think exciting, and it's part of what Northeastern should do. We should always have our commuter student mission, because it's how we were founded, and it will be the majority of our students. But we have new opportunities with residential students. And so I hope by the time you get there, that part's old hat, but it probably won't be. We'll still be working on it. We may have opened our first res hall on Brent Meyer, but maybe not the second one, which is on the property here, our own property already, but on Foster. And then we'll be looking at programming for students who are in residence halls. And that again overlaps the faculty function, not completely, it's a student life and some other things. So there's that piece. So there's the fiscal piece, there is the housing piece.
One of the things I was really impressed by was that issues just appear. The year I worked in the president's office, something would just show up and we have to deal with it. And it was just sort of an unexpected kind of thing. And sometimes it was really cool, like the opportunity to take over the University Center of Lake County, in which case it became a multi-month endeavor. And other things, they just take up your morning or a couple of weeks or something like that. But you sort of have to react from time to time.
Another interesting behind the scenes is the Board of Trustees. And if they came up with a question all of a sudden and you felt obligated because they are trustees, you must provide the background right away. So John or whomever, go and find what we can so we can answer this question.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to your question and answer the question of what our problems are in the next 5 years. I think another thing that we are going to be facing is continuing declines in enrollment. They're already coming down. Not only get lower state appropriations, but our enrollments are coming down. The reason being is simply demographics, I believe, because one of the things I did is I studied the area around us and looked at the age-gender distribution. And gosh, for our majority population, white and Asian population, if you know population pyramids, they went like this, college age and then high school age is like that. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know exactly where we are on this free fall, and we're experiencing it. And the question is, when's it going to stop? But once it stops, it's not going to bounce back up. So, what do we do about that? There are ways that we can respond to increase our enrollments, but we just have to be nimble.
Actually, I think there are 3 bullet points on that one, Eric. You got the biggest one, and what is the nature of the population coming along. But one of our successes is one of our problems. We were asked not too many years ago to focus on graduating our students. And Northeastern students, you probably experienced, they're very serious. They are good students, but they have these other lives, so they don't always stick it out. They start, and they got to go away, they come back later. So we focused more on being sure that our students had what they needed to graduate. And so what we did is we've had the highest numbers of graduates in our history, and we have shrunk our student body. Not near enough to account for what Eric is describing. He's describing the bigger piece. But that success actually shrank our student body. There are lots of things to worry about on the enrollment picture, and part of it is stuff we cannot control. And part of it, if we do some different kinds of recruiting and the new website and things like that, that should be helpful.
And I know that I'm kind of a minority voice in this, but I feel fairly strongly that the changes in technology across the country and around the world are really going to come to affect us. And that is things like MOOCs. They'll be better than they are now. They'll be better received than they are now by employers, and they're going to be something that we really have to come to terms with. So we can take advantage of technology too. So that's not all bad, but I think that there are changes that we just have to be aware of.
So I can add one little thing just from my perspective, and that is something that's constant, and it's constant throughout the university, is the accountability piece. We talked about assessments earlier, but our legislators want to know how we're spending every penny, and we need to have the data to share that. That's not going to change. In fact, it'll probably get worse and worse because the for-profit universities are threatening universities like ours, and so if we need to keep them up to standards, we need to start answering those standards, even though we know we're doing them already. So that I don't think is going to get any better. It's probably going to get more and more difficult for us.
Another challenge that I would throw out there is getting the word out about Northeastern. I think, you know, everybody calls us the best kept secret. We really have something here, and so one of our challenges is to let the region know, you know, what they can get from Northeastern, and that, you know, so that's a really an opportunity.
I think there's at least two kinds of reputation. And I would put that one under academic reputation in very most wonderful sense. And there's academic reputation when you as individual faculty go to the conference of your specialty and present. So in that case, be sure you have a lapel. So I should have brought it. But then there's the, let's just call it the Chicago reputation, you know, in your neighborhood, in your area. And that's actually a little bit different strategy, you know, it's whether it's the billboards and what else to do. So we are kind of working on all of those things in various ways to try to build reputation.
This legislative experience you're getting, the Policy Institute, being able to go and lobby, sounds amazing. When you're done, when you step back into your faculty role, have you found that that has enabled you to you know, impact some kind of positive change in the community? That seems to be something that NEIU, you know, we want to give back to this community that we're in. Have you been able to do that, or do you see yourself as better able to because you now have this, you know, different skill set or more tools?
I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but to me was awareness of what you're doing. It's not necessarily what you want to do. And so you're part of a community, you respond to many people. And I'm saying this in a positive way. Sometimes we think that I'm just here because I want to teach. I want to teach computer science, but this has an effect on many other layers. From my students are going to be employed when they leave, from at the state reps going to value what I'm doing, so they will be more inclined to increase their support. So just being exposed to that, and even when we were talking earlier about these hard questions being brought into the president, and sometimes you hear, well, each one has his or her particular agenda without that specific question. Well, you need to be aware.
I think in general, it's made me both more fearless and more polite, which is a really handy combination, because when you start to think that you can actually say something if you think things aren't working very well, and you now have the experience to maybe help make them work better. Having had a lot of practice and a lot of watching diplomacy, that helps. So, you know, in that sense, it's kind of changed my trajectory in terms of how I work with people and how I deal with people.
But it was a really interesting experience in the times that I got to do that. What I think I got more out of it really were some of the conferences. I went to several major national conferences, and to hear what's being talked about at the university, you know, at the higher level, and the big trends and changes and things, I found that really invigorating.
Yeah, I think personally, it's one of the best things I've ever done with my life, was to do this job. I walk away with a lot more confidence in my decision-making ability because, you know, in conversation with the president, it was just one-on-one, and I could say whatever I thought. And a lot of the time, whatever I thought was a pretty good idea, or it seemed like a good idea, but I didn't have enough information to make the call, so it ended up not working. But a lot of times, you know, it was pretty good. And I thought, wow, well, why don't I just do this when I'm out of here, you know? It might make things a little bit better for other people somewhere down the line. I think ultimately, though, so this experience not only helped me grow personally and professionally, but it made me aware of the fact that I'm not stuck being a faculty member the rest of my life. There are lots of other things out there, and you know, that I've enjoyed working in the president's office, and there may be avenues for exploration later.